Let's move on to story number two then. And this is the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, have done a thing this week, and it's quite a big move. They have got rid of the so-called loyalty penalty. So for home insurance and motor insurance, just to define what we're talking about here, when you sign up for a new insurance policy for your motor or home, you typically get a very good deal because insurance companies are trying to attract new customers. They give you good offers via price comparison websites or even directly. But over time, they are sneaky. I was to choose my words carefully. I don't want to swear on this podcast. They are sneaky people. They do something called price walking. And what price walking is each time your policy renews, each year it renews, the price goes up a bit. And within a few years, all of a sudden, you're not paying a lovely competitive premium, you're paying a very expensive premium. And the FCA and various consumer groups have been looking at this issue for several years now. And the FCA have now come out with new rules that are going to ban this practice of price walking. And they come into force next January, January 2022. And it's going to kill off this loyalty penalty. It's going to save, apparently, over the next 10 years, it's going to save consumers £4.2 billion. And that, I think, just tells us the scale of the issue here. That's a lot of money.
It is. And I have to say, I think loyalty penalties are absolutely, I think it's despicable
Mm,
behavior from insurance. I think it's completely immoral. Inevitably, the people that really end up paying that loyalty penalty in a big way tend to be older people that maybe are not so, they're not as savvy with the internet and things like that. And where perhaps younger people that were aware of it, because there will be people that are really not very savvy when it comes to money and will not even know that this is a thing.
mm,
But most people would be likely, to log on to a comparison site after a year if they can be bothered, and it's that straightforward. A lot of people don't even have that option. So I think it's utterly despicable behavior that this was ever a thing in the first place. And I am very, very happy that the FCA has actually listened to consumer groups, and this is now going to be changed. I think it's unfortunate that it's coming in January, because I understand why they may need a bit of breathing space,
mm.
because obviously they as a business will need to kind of maybe rework some pricing structures and feel like things like that. But I would say maybe from September, when people start renewing their policies, then they kind of automatically go into this system whereby they're not going to be paying more
Yeah.
than. I think we could probably bring it forward a little bit further. But there was actually a research note that went along with this when the FCA kind of released all this stuff. And it really spoke to how vulnerable consumers can be without even realizing.
Yeah.
And the choices that they make can sometimes be, I mean, they're not the best choices, and it's kind of so I'll give you an example. So they carried out a load of research on consumers choosing which home and motor insurance was best for them, and they found that really overwhelmingly some sort of cash discount and promotion that closely resembled a cash discount, so like retail vouchers, for
Mm,
example, really undermined people's ability to choose the best insurance deal for them. And you think that's important, because the thing with insurance is that, most people, it can feel a little bit like just throwing money into the void.
mm.
But actually, if you were to crash your car or your roof was to fall through or something like that, it's very, very important that you have the right insurance in place. um, this research actually went even further, and it said that participants were particularly attracted to just pound signs on in
Right.
advertising, which is madness to me. I can't believe that is, it's such an easy way to kind of reel people in. And so I'm very, yeah, I completely, I think this is great from the FCA. I have to say, I don't know enough about loyalty penalties to know how many other sectors this affects. I assume that
Yeah.
loyalty penalties are a broad thing across
Yeah,
the
it's
board,
rife. I
right?
mean, this hopefully is just a start. I know Citizens Advice, they launched some sort of super complaint into this a while back, and we were talking about, yeah, broadband packages and telephone lines and satellite television and cable packages, that sort of thing. So this is not just motor and home insurance. And I referred to insurers earlier as, sneaky swear words. One of the things the FCA pointed out within this research and within this publication was that insurance companies have algorithms. So they identify people who use price comparison websites and who shop around for the best deal, who are most likely to stick with them at subsequent renewals. So they know what the characteristics of those types of customers with real inertia look like. and then they offer them the best deals because they prey on your laziness almost, your inertia to just accept the renewal premium when it comes through and not shop around each time. So you might have gone to a price comparison website to get your policy in the first place, but they look at your demographic features, they look at your characteristics, and their algorithms, their software algorithms, work out who the suckers are effectively, who are most likely to stick with them, and over the years be much, much worse off financially. So I think that's just an example of how awful these practices have become. And it's particularly bad, as you say, for probably older and more vulnerable insurance customers. So people who don't have access to the internet. I love going onto price comparison websites and shopping around and finding the best deals for this. And electricity and gas would be the other thing. Utility prices. It happens in that market too. Now, the downside, of course, of them getting rid of the loyalty penalty is probably the death of really cheap deals. So whereas I love going onto Meerkat themed websites and trying to find a good deal at the moment, other price comparison websites are available. There won't be those deals in the future because insurers won't be, dangling the carrot and offering us really cheap policies because they won't be able to then get the money back through that practice of price walking.
No, and while I don't feel too dreadful about that in general, because I think I would personally, I would rather pay more and know that the system is not exploiting
Mm,
people that just are either not aware of this or don't have access to being able to change quite as easily as I would. Um, but I suppose, and I'm just thinking about this now, so do tell me if you think I'm wrong, you could end up in a situation where maybe people don't get the insurance they need. I mean, you can't do that with motor insurance because you have to have motor insurance
mm,
to actually
yes.
drive a car. So you hope, you need to get motor insurance. If you don't, that is not a good thing to do. But I believe that home insurance is not mandatory. You don't have to get home insurance. And so I worry that actually it might sort of put people off. And as a result, if anything does go badly wrong, that's a heavy, heavy price to pay for not kind of wanting to go for a cheap deal. So I would really urge people, if you are somebody that pays for home insurance, and I do know people actually that do not pay for home insurance
Mm.
at all, um, please don't be put off because it's not painfully cheap.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And because there aren't pound signs with the advertising or cashback deals and the rest of it, as you mentioned, buildings insurance, if you have a mortgage, compulsory. Don't go without that because you can end up in a very, very difficult legal position if a meteor crashes through your roof and you didn't have buildings insurance in place. Your mortgage lender would take you to the cleaners should that happen. But contents insurance on home insurance is often seen as an optional type of cover, and it's only when the burglar shows up and takes everything you realise how important that was to have in place, or if there's an accident or a flood or a fire that guts the inside of your property. We're talking about horrible things at the moment, but you're right. Don't be deterred from putting the insurances in place, which are important, which are essential to have, simply because we're seeing now the end of these very, very cheap deals. That's the sort of the unintended consequence, I guess, of these FCA rules. The really important bit is it should stop this exploitation. Although, interestingly, when that announcement came out, I had a look at the share prices and the reaction to the market of some of these insurance companies. Didn't really move. Some of them went up. So, whilst we're talking about £4.2 billion being saved by consumers over the past 10 years, you can bet your bottom dollar that these insurance companies are going to find ways to keep their profits high, to squeeze their consumers even more in different ways.
Oh, I hope they wouldn't be squeezing consumers. I mean, my kind of reaction to why this isn't actually a huge problem for them is that, assuming that we don't get swathes of people now just deciding, right, I'm never buying any insurance again on anything and I'm just going to do what I like, um, they will just charge more money. I actually don't
Yeah.
think they'll lose out at all, which bothers me slightly because I feel like they should. I feel like this has been such poor behavior for such a long time that actually they should take a hit of some sort. I think that would only be fair, but they won't do it. It's like any business. It will be passed on to the consumer in some way, shape, or form, and that will simply come as higher premiums. And that's what we have to expect out of this. Again, what I think is overall good legislation from the FCA. And to add to that as well, I actually wrote this story for City AM. And when big kind of moves like this come out from the FCA, you get tons and tons and tons of reaction from
Mm.
all sorts of people, everyone that's ever been associated with insurance or is kind of, Money Supermarket, places like that that deal with kind of consumer rights and things
Mm.
like that. And I was going back through this last night in the hope of finding something a bit controversial that I could bring up today as a point to be like, but have you considered
Mm.
this? And there was not one reaction that was like that. So whether insurers were kind of too afraid to actually say, oh, that sucks. But every single person was completely behind this and completely backing this. So I think probably the FCA have got this one right.
Yeah, you can bet that within some boardrooms at insurance companies, there probably some tears and some upset reactions, but that's no bad thing.